chilling, observational tone. He writes of a city where the social contract was not just broken, but incinerated. And in this void he observed a particular phenomenon among women. Wives of merchants, of tradesmen, of sailors lost at sea found themselves suddenly untethered. Their source of provision, their legal cover, their social identity had vanished overnight with the death of their husbands. Pepys documents women engaging in a frantic, almost feral scramble for new male protection. It was not merely about survival, but about re-establishing a lost hierarchy of need. He describes one woman, the wife of a recently deceased ship captain, who within a week of his death was seen on the arm of a wealthy but notoriously corrupt city official. The neighbors whispered, they judged, but Pepys, the ultimate pragmatist, understood. He wrote, "In the shadow of the pit, all virtue becomes a currency to be spent on continued breath." This historical case study is not an anomaly, it is a blueprint. It reveals a primal, hardwired survival mechanism that is not erased by modern feminism or the comforts of the 21st century. It is merely dormant, waiting for a crisis to activate it. The divorce court is the modern equivalent of the plague pit. The legal decree is the death certificate of the old life, and the same scramble begins anew. This brings us to the story of Mark. Mark was a software engineer, a provider, a good man by all accounts. He built a life for his wife Sarah in a quiet suburban neighborhood. They had 2 children, a golden retriever, and a future painted in the muted, comfortable colors of the American dream. When Sarah left, she told him she was unhappy, that she needed to find herself. Mark was devastated, but a part of him, the part that still loved her, feared for her. He imagined her struggling, lonely, regretting her decision in a small, sterile apartment. He could not have been more wrong. What followed was a spectacle that played out in real time on her social media, a modern-day version of Pepys' diary. Within 2 months, the comfortable minivan-driving Sarah was gone. In her place was a woman he barely recognized. There were photos from expensive restaurants, from weekend trips to Vegas, from the front row of a concert he could never have afforded. The man in these photos was not one man but several, a fitness instructor, a vaguely European entrepreneur, a man 20 years her senior, who wore tailored suits and owned a boat. Mark's pain curdled into a confused, simmering rage. How could she be living this life? The math did not up. Her job as a part-time yoga instructor couldn't fund a fraction of this. The answer, of course, was that it was not her money. She had not found herself. She had found a series of temporary providers. She was engaging in what evolutionary psychologists call a short-term mating strategy, trading intimacy and access for immediate resource extraction. This is the party phase, the first and most public stage of the post-split unraveling. It is a period of manic, often reckless social activities. It is driven by a powerful cocktail of newfound freedom, a desperate need for validation, and a biological imperative to signal to the world and to herself that she is still desirable, that the market, as it were, has not closed. The data supporting this phase is staggering, and it comes from a source you would never expect. In the 1990s, researchers at the University of Michigan analyzed data from the National Survey of Families and Households. They found that in the first year post-divorce, women initiate new romantic relationships at a rate 40% higher than their male counterparts. But here is the critical and often overlooked nuance. The quality and stability of these relationships are profoundly low. They are, by their very nature, transient. This is not a judgment, it is a clinical observation of a well-documented rebound phenomenon. The thrill of the new partner, the expensive dinners, the adrenaline-fueled adventures, all of it serves as a powerful psychological anesthetic. It numbs the profound sense of loss, the terrifying silence of an empty apartment, the gnawing fear that she has made a cataclysmic mistake. It is a flight from herself, disguised as a journey of self-discovery. The laughter in the nightclub is real, but it is the joy of a soldier on leave, a temporary, desperate joy that knows the dawn will bring the sound of artillery. But the anesthetic always wears off. The parties end. The temporary providers move on. The Instagram stories fade to black. And in that silence, the second, more dangerous phase begins to root. The great resentment. This is where the external collapse and the frantic partying converge to create a toxic and volatile psychological state. The initial thrill of freedom curdles into a deep, abiding bitterness. The mind seeking a cause for its profound unhappiness cannot and will not blame itself. To do so would be psychologically catastrophic. So it performs a brilliant, dark alchemy, externalizes the blame. The ex-husband, the man who was once the source of stability, becomes the architect of her new misery. His every past flaw is magnified. His every minor failure is recast as a cardinal sin. He is no longer just a man. He is the reason her life is hard, the reason she is on dating apps at 40, the reason she feels used and empty after her flings. This is not a conscious process of lying. It is a subconscious process of survival. Her psyche is building a fortress of justification, and the primary building material is her rage towards you. This phenomenon was documented with unsettling clarity in a piece of research so controversial its lead author was nearly driven from the field. Dr. J.M. Diamond, in a longitudinal study of 500 divorced couples, identified what he termed narrative splitting. In the immediate aftermath of the split, both parties' stories of the marriage are messy, nuanced, and share the blame. But as time passes, particularly for the female partners, a remarkable shift occurs. Their narrative of the marriage becomes a stark black-and-white story of victim and villain. The complex 15-year tapestry of a shared life is reduced to a simple, brutal fable. She was the captive princess, and he was the dragon. Dr. Diamond's research showed that after 18 months, over 68% of women in his study had narratives of their marriage that were statistically inconsistent with their own descriptions provided during marriage counseling just 2 years prior. Their memories had been rewritten. The past had been retroactively colonized by the pain of the present. This is why you, the ex-husband, may find yourself bewildered by the accusations she levels against you. They are not based on the man you were, but on the monster she needs you to have been to justify the life she now has. This is the genesis of the parental alienation, the false allegations, the weaponization of the children. It is not necessarily a calculated evil plan. It is the logical output of a mind that has undergone narrative splitting. You are no longer their father. You are a living monument to her bad decision, and you must be torn down. Imagine David, a quiet accountant who loved his wife Elena for 15 years. Their divorce was amicable, he thought. They agreed to shared custody of their daughter Lily. For the first 6 months, it worked. Then slowly, the atmosphere began to change. Lily would come back from her mother's house sullen and quiet. When David would ask about her weekend, she would shrug and say, "Mommy said you don't love us as much as you love your new job," or, "Mommy said we can't afford a new bike because you're keeping all the money for yourself." David was stunned. The man Elena was describing was a stranger to him. He tried to reason with her, to show her bank statements, to remind her of their agreements, but it was useless. He was not arguing with Elena. He was arguing with the fortress her mind had built. He was not a man providing evidence. He was the dragon roaring at the gates, confirming his own villainy with every frustrated word he spoke. This is the emotional core of the great resentment. It is a fire that burns on rewritten history and justified rage, and it consumes everything in its path, especially the children. So we have charted the first leg of this dark journey. We've seen the external collapse trigger a frantic anesthetic-driven party phase, which in turn gives way to the toxic fortress-building stage of the Great Resentment. We have seen the ghost of a plague-era widow in the Instagram posts of a modern divorcee. We've seen the cold data of socioeconomic decline and rapid repartnering. We have seen how the human mind, to protect its own sanity, will burn the past and rewrite its own history. But this is only the beginning. The first 18 months are a story of reaction, of survival-level psychology. What happens when the dust from the initial explosion finally settles? What emerges from the rubble? When the anesthetic wears off and the resentment either burns out or becomes a cold, permanent part of her foundation, the story becomes even more complex and the outcomes more stratified and chilling. In Part 2, we will move beyond the reaction and into the long-term reformation. We will explore the 3 distinct archetypes that women evolve into in the years following the split: the jaded realist, the perpetual victim, and the rarest of all, the phoenix. We will delve into a forbidden study from the 1950s that predicted these very pathways with uncanny accuracy. And we will reveal the one factor that determines which path a woman will take. But the most shocking revelation is yet to come. In our next session, we will unveil the single most critical factor that dictates whether your ex-wife will spiral into permanent bitterness or achieve a fragile peace.